Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijanna Vallabha Giri Varadari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijanna Vallabha Giri Varadari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijanna Vallabha Giri Varadari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijanna Vallabha Giri Varadari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Giri Varadari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Giri Varadari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Jayo Prabhupada Prabhupada Jayo Prabhupada Prabhupada Jayo Prabhupada Jayo Prabhupada Prabhupada Jayo Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol. Om Agyana Timarandasya Ganan Ganan Shalakya Chakshurun Maditam Jana Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Thank you, dear devotees. Thank you for being here this morning. I hope I could say something of real value that you can take away from this class today. Thank you so much for being here this morning. So I was just thinking, instead of saying Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, since we're doing Lila Amrita, we should have said Om Namo Bhagavate Lila Amrita. I don't know if that's bona fide, but we need to check that up with the authorities. All right, so today we're reading from Lila Amrita, Srila Prabhupada's autobiography, where Satsvarupa Das Goswami, he takes us through this journey of Srila Prabhupada. Now when Srila Prabhupada said that he lives through his books. I'm sure many of you that read Srila Prabhupada's books will understand the meaning of that statement. It's a very profound statement where Srila Prabhupada says he lives through his books. So when you read the lilamrta, you will feel, and I'm sure many of you have done it, can acknowledge this experience, where you feel as though you are traveling with Srila Prabhupada through his journey from India till he gets onto the ship, till he comes to America. You feel that vibe. You feel Srila Prabhupada's presence. And you start to empathize with him as he goes through all his difficulties, his hardships with his ill health and what have you. So we go through the journey, and as we make advancement in Krishna consciousness, we start to feel that, we get that perception, Srila Prabhupada is with us, and that we are not undergoing this journey alone. As much as we have the Paramatma, the Atma, we also have Srila Prabhupada moving and guiding us along on this journey. So we're reading from page 255, volume 4. So one day while meeting with an Indian man, Mr. R.B. Pandya from Mombasa, East Africa, Prabhupada mentioned his illness. So at this point in the lilamrta, we have to understand Srila Prabhupada is very, very ill, gravely ill. So he wanted to move, or wanted to go to a place where, he could recuperate. Because we have to understand, Srila Prabhupada's time was very short. And he realized it himself that his time is going to be short. And to propagate this mission of his, it had to be done in as quick as possible time so that he could give this message out to the West. So time was of essence. So while he was having these challenges with his ill health, he also realized that he needed to recuperate quickly so that he could deliver this message of Krishna consciousness. So, when you talk about this message of Krishna consciousness, we realize how important this message really is. Because when Srila Prabhupada went to London, the reporter asked him, "What is it that you came for, that you brought to England?" Prabhupada said, "You're British, you took all the material jewels that we had in our country. But the most important thing I came to hand deliver to you today, which is Sanatan Dharma, the eternal Vedic scripture." So Prabhupada was very, very eloquent in his demeanor. Of course, he was being sarcastic, but probably they got the message. Mr. Pandya said he owned a house on the ocean at Mombasa, where it was always sunny and warm, with pleasant sea breezes. A perfect place for Prabhupada to recover his health. Mr. Pandya invited Prabhupada to go and live there as long as he liked. Taking the offer seriously, Prabhupada began to think of going to Africa, not only for health, but for preaching. So this preaching drive of Prabhupada was always there. And even when he was incapacitated, whether he was ill, he always had that mission that, how can I spread this movement? How can I give this Krishna consciousness to the people in the West? Taking the offer seriously, Prabhupada began to think of going to Africa, not only for health, but for preaching. 3 months ago, he had sent Brahmananda Swami and Jaganivas to East Africa. So a visit there would encourage them as well as enable Prabhupada to work personally at expanding the Krishna consciousness movement on the African continent. So Prabhupada sent Bhavananda and Naranarayan from London to Mombasa to see if it would really be possible for him to stay there, as Mr. Pandya had suggested. When Bhavananda and Naranarayan arrived, Brahmananda Swami, who had been struggling in East Africa with only one assistant, was delighted to see them and to hear that Prabhupada was coming soon. Previously, Brahmananda Swami had been preaching in Florida, and Prabhupada had written him to go to Pakistan. Immediately he had gone, along with one assistant, Jaganivas, flying to Paris and then taking the Orient Express through Eastern Europe. On hearing that war fever was building in Pakistan, Prabhupada sent a second letter to Brahmananda Swami in Florida, advising him not to go to Pakistan. But of course, Brahmananda Swami never received that letter. So it just goes to show how serious the disciples were in Prabhupada's instruction. Just on the mention of the fact that Prabhupada wanted preaching to be started in Pakistan, which obviously would be one of the toughest terrains ever to start a preaching movement or to develop Krishna consciousness. But yet these two disciples of Prabhupada dropped everything and they were gone. And Prabhupada was concerned because at that time Pakistan was going through real strife, real war, and he didn't know, he was worried about the safety of his disciples. So as much as Prabhupada wanted this movement to spread, but also he wanted the devotees to be protected as much as possible. Prabhupada had sent a second letter, of course I read that one, advising him not to go to Pakistan. But Brahmananda Swami had never received the letter. En route to Pakistan while holding public kirtan in Turkey, Brahmananda and Jaganivas had been arrested and detained for several days on suspicion of being Christian missionaries. Finally, Brahmananda and Jaganivas had arrived in Pakistan, where students had spit at them. Just look at it, the amount of humiliation they had to undergo. Accused them of being spies, threatened them, and called them names. Several times people on the street had rubbed the Vaishnava tilak off the devotees' foreheads and warned them not to show themselves in public or they would be stabbed. Local Hindus had warned the devotees to leave as soon as possible, so they had reluctantly decided to go to Bombay to see Prabhupada. Meanwhile in Bombay, Prabhupada had read in an Indian newspaper that Pakistani soldiers in Dhaka had killed 4 Hare Krishna missionaries. And of course, Prabhupada thought the worst, that Brahmananda was probably one of those people that was killed in that, one of the 4 people that were killed. I am very much anxious to know about Brahmananda, Prabhupada had written. The day has been full of anxiety with this bad news, and still it is going on. When Srila Prabhupada had heard that Brahmananda Swami had actually arrived in Bombay, he had asked to see him at once, like a father recovering his lost child. Prabhupada had embraced him. You risked your life just on my order, Prabhupada had said. After some days, Prabhupada had told Brahmananda Swami, you should go to Africa. If you go, then we will be on all the continents. Now, after preaching in Africa, Brahmananda Swami eagerly awaited the visit of his beloved spiritual master. So, I mean, this was a boon for Prabhupada, because if the devotees came to Africa, then Krishna consciousness would have had its foothold on all the continents in the world. And that was Prabhupada's aim, that in following the instruction of his spiritual master to take Krishna consciousness and preach through the English via medium to the people of the West. This was his calling. So he was happy to know that now we are going to Africa and we're going to have a foothold in Africa. So Prabhupada was really, really happy. So I have to say that I personally am very disappointed in myself that in 1975, when a car that was driven by, I think, Jivananda Prabhu, or his father. Yes, so they were going around announcing for Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada was going to give a talk in the Durga Hall. And then he also was going to make a quick lightning stop at the Milk Carnival at Unit 3. So at that time, we used to have the Milk Carnival, which was a very, very big event in Chatsworth. And the culmination of that event was a very, very big soccer match that was playing. And I still remember the two teams that played in that. So it's a pity Jai Sachinanda is not here, because I could have taken him back in time. But I didn't have that interest to want to go to see Srila Prabhupada. My interest was to go for the soccer match. So when I got to the soccer match, I had seen all these little punnets, empty punnets, and I think the devotees had given biryani at that day. But Prabhupada had already spoken and had left. I think his talk was only for about 10 or 15 minutes, and he had left. And then I was looking at all these punnets. I asked the question, how is it that food was being served here at a public forum, and it wasn't announced and all and whatever? They said, no, the Hare Krishnas came here and they had a big kirtan, and maybe I was disappointed that I didn't get one of those punnets. I think I had that. But you see my misfortune. And then later on, subsequent, I said, you know what? I met my friend Prady, who introduced me to Krishna consciousness in 1984. And then he told me, you know what? I have to tell you, you missed the greatest opportunity of your lifetime to see Prabhupada. Because he had gone, although he was a footballer, he had gone early to listen to Srila Prabhupada talk. And he says that stays with him for the rest of his life. Yeah. That was my misfortune. So Nairobi is the capital of Kenya. And I think the Prabhu that came here, Kuranga Prabhu, he's from that temple in Kenya. So Srila Prabhupada went to Kenya first before he came down to South Africa. As Srila Prabhupada disembarked in Nairobi from the East African Airlines 747 jet, he wore a wool chadar over his shoulders and carried the same white vinyl attaché case he had taken with him all over the world. Flanked by his secretary and servant, he walked with his cane across the airfield towards the terminal building. Inside, he sat on a cloth-covered chair and joined the kirtan, while Indians and Africans gathered around to watch. So, when Srila Prabhupada disembarked in an airplane, before you come to touchdown, the air hostess will normally tell you, please sit in your seat, fasten your seat belts, do not move. But Srila Prabhupada used to do the direct opposite. He'll get up, he'll go to the maybe toilets, because it had a mirror. He'll put his tilak on nicely, and the garlands that he had on his thing, he'll put all the garlands back on. And it was important, because Prabhupada said later, it is very, very important that we look and dress like a Vaishnav, because even for us coming to the temple, now in the early days I used to come in my shorts and my t-shirt, and then one day one devotee, very senior devotee, told me, listen here Prabhu, you can come to the temple, you can listen as much as you can imbibe whatever the mood is, but Krishna does not recognize you because you're not dressed appropriately. And from that day, I got a rude awakening, and I started try to dress with proper Vaishnava attire whenever I come and do service and what have you at the temple. So, but Prabhupada, we have to understand, he led by example. There was nothing that he didn't do which he expected his devotees to do. Whatever he expected his devotees to do, he could do it himself perfectly, and he always showed this, that he led by example. And it's very important. Even if you're playing, if you're in a work situation and you find that the leader or your boss or something is incompetent and cannot do what he's telling you to do, then you don't do it wholeheartedly, because he's asking me to do something which he doesn't know himself. How is he going to check to know that what I'm doing is correct? So it's very important that the leader of whatever society, organization, is perfect and in their dealings, and they know exactly what they're doing, to expect somebody else to do the same thing. Kul Busana, a journalist and friend of Brahmananda Swami's, approached Prabhupada with questions. He asked Prabhupada what he had come to teach, and Prabhupada answered, modern civilized man has forgotten his relationship with Krishna, or God, and is therefore suffering. Whether you are Hindu, Muslim or Buddhist, that doesn't matter. Unless you re-establish your relationship with God, you cannot be happy. You know, there's something that always stands out in my mind is Bhaktatirtha Swami when he gave the speech at the opening of this temple. And he said, I mean, that day there was a lot of distinguished dignitaries, including Nelson Mandela, and I think Gachaputtalezi was here, and the rector from the University of Durban, Westphal, was here. I forget his name now, and all of here. Right? So many dignitaries were here, and so Bhaktitirtha Swami said, we are the only organization that has or practice this variegatedness, and that word, such a beautiful word, and it stands out and it epitomizes for me what Krishna consciousness is all about. This variegatedness, as we're sitting here today, we could say we got white devotees, black body devotees, Indian devotees, I don't say any colored devotees, but I mean, we have people from all. So Prabhupada said, we are the United Nations, because we are able to attract people from all different religious groups, racial groups, to come together, and they are working for a common cause, which is Krishna. So, Bhaktitirtha Swami, he emphasized this point. He said, we are the only organization that brings people together because of our purpose. And what is our purpose? To serve Krishna. And through this medium, we are encouraging people to come and to serve. Mr. Busana, East Africa, especially Kenya, is one of those countries which enjoys a great amount of racial harmony in brotherhood of man. What is your special message you can bring to Kenya? Srila Prabhupada said, that brotherhood of man can be complete when they are in God consciousness. Otherwise, it will again break. So, again, I think this is more a teaching for us as well. No matter what the organization is, what the person's position is in life, Prabhupada said all we do, we add Krishna consciousness to that. We add Krishna to it, and everything gets value. So Prabhupada also give that example of you have many, many zeros. But when we put Krishna in the front of those zeros, that one gives that all those zeros value. So that value can only be there if we've got Krishna consciousness. So even when sometimes when I'm preaching or just saying, so I don't forget where I've come from in my personal life. And like I used to tell, I think I told the story the last time, where my mother and I will fight on that Monday to eat, because she used to observe, she was vegetarian on the Monday. And I'll say, and she said, Monday is a good day. But I said, who made Monday a good day? You? Then what happened to the other days? How they became bad days? And so we used to have this ongoing debate. So when I'm preaching to people, I don't say, stop this, stop that, stop that. I say, add this Krishna consciousness, add this chanting to your this thing. And I've got a lot of friends who, they live their life as normal, but they've added Krishna consciousness. I think Gaura Bhumi, the day before yesterday, she made a valid point. As we make advancement in Krishna consciousness, it's like a balancing act. And the balancing act is, we've got materialism on one side and we've got spiritualism on the other side. So one, it's not like one gets eradicated and the other one takes over. It's a gradual diminution of the things that we held important when we were on the material platform. And slowly we start to give it up. Slowly we start to say, hey, this is not important anymore. And I personally can see it in my life, coming from a very, very strong sporting background where I played Natal cricket, Natal volleyball, and, ran comrades. That was, for me, the focus of my life. But today, I can see how it really doesn't matter so much to me, because if Manchester win or loses, they don't put food on my table. It's only Jai soup on Saturday that I look forward to. So that's it. So your disciples will be making special efforts to reach the Africans rather than confine themselves to the Hindus. That is very important here in this country. So I think, and I think maybe Raghunath Bhatta knows more because he's been there to Kenya. The Indian population is very big. I think the Gujarati influence is very, very big there. So Prabhupada never said we must preach to the Hindu people or to the Indian people. Firstly, he was averse to the word Hindus. He said there's no such word in the Vedic scripture about Hindus. But he said, preaching must be universal. We must appeal to all religious groups, because if we break down the individual and we come down to the soul, we are actually all brothers and sisters sitting here. We are on the same platform. But due to our conditioning, our life per se, we are now we think, I'm this body and what have you. But be that as it may, Srila Prabhupada wanted to transcend and break barriers that we had become accustomed to. Srila Prabhupada says, our method is the same, but the method is so powerful that it appeals to everyone. We do not have to convey a new method for a new place. The method is the same, universal. It will appeal to everyone. So I think this is also indicative of Prabhupada, how he lived his life. Prabhupada was very, very routine. And Prabhupada said, repetition is the mother of all remembrances. And that stuck with me. It's a powerful statement. Repetition is the mother of all remembrances. What does it mean? It means that if you do something over and over again, it stays with you. It becomes second nature to you. And it's very, very difficult to forget. So if you look at Srila Prabhupada's life, and I think if you read Transcendental Diaries, Prabhupada was so regimented in his life. He was so routine in what he did. So if he went from one country to another, and if the time was 8 o'clock, so whatever he did at 8 o'clock was the same he did wherever he was. And he used to pick up and continue. Whereas his assistants, they used to be so tired, suffering from jet lag and what have you. But Prabhupada was always ever youthful, and he used to just get up and get on and move on and do whatever it was that he had to do to spread this Krishna conscious movement. And Prabhupada said, the people in the West, they like variety. They like to experiment. They like to bring in new concepts. They like to bring in new innovations, because we are brought up like that. We are conditioned in that way. Prabhupada said no. Like the people were making sweets in America, Mangal sweets. And they said, giving Krishna the same thing every day. Come on, let's change it around. So they brought in a little bit they put it up some twist in the sweets. And Prabhupada got to taste it. And he said, what is this? Why are you changing? I've given you the recipe for something that is foolproof. Why are you now going and changing something which I have already prescribed to be done in a certain way? They said, no, Prabhupada, we're tired of giving the deities the same things every day. No, we want to bring about some change. He said, no need for change. These are the sweets, 5 standard sweets. You make it accordingly and you carry on. And that is when the message started spreading to the other temples and what have you. Prabhupada wants a standard. Prabhupada wants to keep things consistent. And because when you keep things consistent and you don't change, then there's no variety, there's no this thing about bringing about change. Everything becomes constant. If you see our movement, the program is planned, it stays. If you go anywhere in the world, Mangalati starts at the same time, greetings is the same time, class is the same time, and everything else structured. So Prabhupada wanted to keep the structure as far as possible because he didn't want to bring about deviation. Because when we are bringing about deviation, then we are prone for speculation. And when we start speculating, that is where the problem comes about. Then people want to bring in some change. Then people, when it came to our philosophy, Prabhupada was adamant. This philosophy, I didn't generate this philosophy, I merely translated it into English. But it is there. It's there from bygone time. And we just have to follow. So Prabhupada didn't want to tweak anything. So whenever anybody gave Prabhupada credit, oh, Prabhupada, you're so great and whatever, he just deferred that. He said, I didn't do anything great. All I did was merely translate it as it is from Sanskrit into English. That's the only credit I can take. After spending one night in Nairobi, Prabhupada and his party flew the next day in a small propeller aircraft to Mombasa. Mr. Pandya was away and his family, although not very enthusiastic, opened their home to Srila Prabhupada. The large house was of contemporary design with rounded corners, portholes, windows, and spacious living room with a veranda facing the ocean. Prabhupada, standing by the window in the room, beheld an aquamarine sea, a cloudless blue sky, and a white sandy beach fringed with palms. So, we as conditioned people, we always look for a holiday. We want to go to the beach and to the sea. But Prabhupada, if you listen to him in Honolulu, in Hawaii, when they used to go on the morning walk and they should show him the surfers, he said, these are sufferers. Why they sufferers? Because they are attached to the ocean. They're going to take birth in the sea in the next life. So it's quite scary to note that things that we like on the material level can be to our detriment. Sometimes we want to break away from routine life. We condition like that. We want to break away. We want to go to the beach. Then we want to sit by the sea. We want to chant. I know, okay, that's fine. But when this thing becomes a routine and a habit, then that can be very, very dangerous, because what it does at the end of the day, it focuses our mind into that particular type of designated place that we are in, and as a result, our consciousness moves in that direction, where the chances are of us at the time of death to think of the Lord becomes diminished. So coming from a teaching background and doing exams, tests with children for 35 years, we ask ourselves the question, the most important exam, which is at the time of death, is something we do not prepare for. We take very lightly. And we say, oh, okay, when I get older, we'll think about death. At this point in time, as I'm talking to you, I have a family member that I consider to be a multi-billionaire. And he's in hospital now for 2 months. And all that money cannot help him or save him or will give him 1 ounce of air when it is time for him to go. And it's a real eye-opener for a lot of people in the family, and I'm trying to use this as a platform maybe to preach to some of them, although they will agree with me, but I'm sure the moment they step out of the hospital and they go out, they go back to the original thinking, so that's the human mentality, where we come for a funeral, but this biggest illusion that we are under is that that's not going to happen to me. And then when we walk out of the funeral and we go back home, we go back to our normal life, we go back to our old habits, we go back to our original way that we operated. So it is, even for us as devotees, to cultivate that mindset. Therefore Prabhupada said, 24 hours you have to be engaged. Even that, he never said 23 hours and 59 minutes. 24 hours. That 1 minute can lead to your downfall. So the chanting has to happen. And I think the last time when I spoke, I also made reference to when George Harrison came to Prabhupada, he had already been in contact with Maharishi. So Prabhupada asked him, so what do you know about this, our Hare Krishna movement? He said, no, I love the chanting, and I've been chanting 45 minutes a day before I met the devotees. Oh, Prabhupada was amazed. And he said, what is it about the chanting that attracts you? He said, I learned that chanting mustn't be a sound, but must be an awakening of divinity. That's a powerful statement. When you say chanting mustn't be a sound, but it mustn't be mechanical. It must awaken divinity, which means it must awaken the divinity within your heart, where the super soul is now aroused by what you are saying. And then he said, the second point was that chanting of Hare Krishna must be done in a mood of love. It mustn't be done where it's just merely a sound, a mechanical thing. The love. So Prabhupada asked, what do you mean by love? He said, no, he's got to awaken the love within the heart. It's got to be a loving reciprocation within the heart. Prabhupada said, you are very right. And he asked the devotees who were sitting there, did you hear what George Harrison had said? And then they said, for the very first time, because it was more because in the Beatles, in the early days, they went to Rishikesh. And when they went to Rishikesh, they had met up with many, many gurus. And also the devotees they met up with there. And then two of them, George Harrison and I think it was John Lennon, were attached to Maharishi. But of course later they became disillusioned with Maharishi because he had fallen down because he had association with a woman from the congregation or what have you. So thereafter George had sort of distanced himself. So you hear when George met the devotees in Apple Studio, he asked them, first question was, where have you been? It was, although the devotees were looking for George to finance them in London, but it was the other way around because George was waiting for them to come. So, so when we hear that these people were already, you have to understand, they were planted in the West. Even George Harrison and people and the devotees from America and whatever, they were already there. They were like ticking time bombs that were there, ready to help Prabhupada in this movement because it was already ordained that Prabhupada, being an Uttama Adhikari, was going to go there and, thanks Baba, he was going to go there and it was going to be a reawakening. So I think at Thompson Square Park, when Prabhupada was sitting, and suddenly he started smiling. So one man that was there asked him, what are you smiling about? And Prabhupada said, I can already see the 108 temples that are going to be built and the devotees that are going to be there. Thousands and thousands of devotees that are going to come. So Prabhupada knew that this was only a matter of time. So when we look at the early days of Prabhupada and his perseverance in staying in America, although he went to the Skindia Airlines to ask them, when is the next ship going back to India? But in his heart he had known, no, this is my Guru Maharaj's instruction and I have to take it seriously and I've got to fulfill this order. So remember when Srila Prabhupada came to Bhaktisiddhanta, he wasn't as enthusiastic as his friend, I think Narendra Malik, the boy's name Narendra Malik. So Narendra Malik was the one who told Prabhupada, hey Prabhupada, that time his name wasn't Prabhupada. So he said, come, there's a guru here. But Prabhupada had already been fed up with all these bogus sadhus who used to come to his house and what have you. So he had grown up accustomed and he had not met somebody who was, resonating with him. He couldn't find somebody that was resonating with him. But he said, come anyway, let's go. So Prabhupada went along. And Narendra Malik, he just drifted away and he never took the movement very seriously. But Prabhupada remembered the first time he met and he heard Bhaktisiddhanta. It connected with him. And that is how he said, he took that mission to his heart and said, this is my life's desire, where now I'm going to go I have to go, and Bhaktisiddhanta had given him the rasta. Go to the West and preach to the West. So this was the calling for Srila Prabhupada. So in that days in America, no matter how hard it was, and when he stayed with certain people that belonged to other organizations, Prabhupada never compromised the philosophy to please them. He was never about pleasing them. So even in the Bowery, when Srila Prabhupada used to preach, he conducted himself in the same way. So there's the new people that used to come say Prabhupada was very, very stern. He used to walk, he sometimes used to be very grave. He used to come properly attired to give class. And after Tompkins Square Park, when they used to go back to the temple, one would think that Prabhupada would be tired, an old man. No, he sat and he gave lecture. Sometimes he spoke for hours. I know one lecture he spoke for 3 hours, where the devotees themselves, they were falling asleep. But Prabhupada delivered and he gave this movement. So Yamuna says, when she took up this challenge of doing a cookbook, she said, when you ate prasadam that was touched by the hand of Srila Prabhupada, it was something amazing. So they were on a macro diet, macrodentic diet or whatever. So they were following like a vegetarian diet, but of course prasadam is superior to that. She said the first time she had prasadam, which was cooked by Prabhupada, had given her, it basically shook her up, where she came to the point of realizing that Prabhupada, whatever he's cooking and the way he is offering it to the Lord, the taste of the Lord is becoming infused in the food and is becoming something else. And that is when she took this seriously, that she's going to follow Prabhupada and learn from the perfect master how to go about one's cooking. And although Prabhupada tolerated a lot of people, different types of cooking, Palika used to cook for him and what have you, but end of the day, Prabhupada was precise, and he said, if you follow this diet plan, then you find you have good health and what have you. Sometimes Prabhupada used to ask them to do some very, very weird things. I was just reading the other day, Prabhupada was so weak, black pepper, he told the devotee, make a paste with black pepper. And he applied it to his forehead. And this devotee didn't want to sleep because he was so scared that Prabhupada may not make it through the night. Next morning, Prabhupada woke up like normal, went through his normal routine and carried on. And that devotee was left wondering, what is it? He was thinking about, I need to take Prabhupada to the doctor, to the hospital tomorrow, making all the arrangements. Prabhupada got it perfect. So Prabhupada had an Ayurvedic solution to many of his problems. So sometimes he used to ask them, do this, do that. And devotees, because they're following an allopathic type of regimen or routine with the medicine, it was difficult for them to identify with this. Okay, this is the last paragraph I'll read. After spending one night in Nairobi, Prabhupada and his party flew the next day in his... Okay, I read that. Prabhupada, standing by the window in his room, beheld an aquamarine sea, a cloudless blue sky, and a white sandy beach fringed with palms. Turning back towards Brahmananda Swami and the others, he said, Brahmananda told me that this was one of the most beautiful places in the world. Now I see he is correct. Prabhupada had come with a chronic cough, but walking on the beach and relaxing in the Mombasa sunshine, he soon recovered his health. Prabhupada maintained his program, begun in London, of daily dialogues with Shyamasundar concerning the Western philosophers. Chronologically, he had proceeded from Socrates to Descartes. So Prabhupada used to like this interaction now with talking about the different type of philosophers, Freud and what have you, and how they perceive life. And if anybody knows, studied psychology, Freud spoke about the id, ego, and the superego. Now, actually break down what Freud was saying. It comes back to what Prabhupada had taught us about the soul, which is the Atma, the super soul, which is the Paramatma. So he had an idea, but he didn't know from a spiritual perspective how this actually resonates with the body. So Prabhupada had they say, the devotee that was writing, Srila Prabhupada told the toughest audience in the world were Hasid heads, potheads, and hippies to turn off, sing out, and fall in. Right? That was the slogan. Turn off, sing out, and fall in. He knew who God is and where He lived and how to reach Him. So, Srila Prabhupada, because he was armed with this type of information, that he knew who Krishna was, he knew his address, and he knew how to contact him through the chanting. That is very, very important, because if you look at a lot of religions, who are impersonal religions, like like the Muslim faith, they believe in a void philosophy. If you go into their musalla, into their prayer room, there's nothing to remind them who God was, who God is. It's total oblivion for them. Right? So they believe in the impersonal form of the Lord. So because Prabhupada had this knowledge, so he was able to defeat a lot of, like in the early days, people used to come and challenge Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada asked them, so you know who God is? You know where He stays? You know how to contact Him? And they were dumbfounded. So they couldn't answer. And that is how Prabhupada used to defeat them. So there's a nice story about Keith, who became Kirtananda later on. So in the early days, Prabhupada had made an acquaintance with a Mr. Larry. So Mr. Larry Prabhupada was going to cook lunch for him. So Mr. Larry was going to come for lunch. So Prabhupada told Keith, please do not allow any of the devotees or any visitors to come to the kitchen, because we're going to be very busy. So Mr. Larry came about 1 hour before, and he asked Keith, can I see, Srila Prabhupada? So he said, no. You are not allowed to go. So he sat, I think he was some minister or something, and he was going to help the devotees to really set up and do something substantial for the devotees. So after an hour, he went back to Keith again. He said, listen here, time is of essence for me. I need to go back. I need to see Srila Prabhupada. He said, no, sorry, you can't go. So Mr. Larry, he left. Prabhupada came down after cooking the lunch. He asked Keith, so where's Mr. Larry? He said, no, Prabhupada, you told me not to allow anybody to come through. But Prabhupada said, but I expect you to use a little bit of your intelligence. I told you we're cooking for Mr. Larry. So if Mr. Larry came and was wanting to see me, how is it that you didn't at least come and tell me that Mr. Larry is here? So you can see how sometimes we take our duty very, very seriously, and it can have a repercussion which can be very, very detrimental to one. And the devotees said they never saw, for the first time, they saw Prabhupada angry. And they all got blasted from a dizzy height. And Prabhupada just went to his room. And he said, you see your type of mentality you Westerners have. You cannot use reason. You cannot reason properly. So that was the first time Prabhupada really got really, really angry with the devotee. So the other point that I made was, Prabhupada, when we get, we have a program, if we see there's too few people, then we get despondent. And we say, hey, is it worthwhile going ahead with the program? Raghunath Bhatta has to give a talk, he sees 3-4 people, and he'll ask himself, is it going to be worth my while giving this class that I prepared? I took so much of time and into research this thing. Now I'm talking to 5 people. I mean, I'll also feel like that, I'll be honest about it. But Prabhupada said, and this was in Australia, there were only 3 people in the hall. And the devotees were busy trying to close up. And Prabhupada said, what are you doing? He said, no, Prabhupada, there's only 3 people here. He said, Prabhupada said, even if there's nobody here, I will still go ahead with the class. And then he reminded them of when he first came to America. Prabhupada used to have class every day with nobody there. And he said, but the devotee said, but why? He said, what about the other living entities? They benefited from it. So you see, Prabhupada was on a level where we cannot really identify with. He was on a level where he saw all living entities as if they had a soul, they were connected to Krishna. And in their evolution in life, how could they evolve in life? Is by hearing the holy name. And so Prabhupada went ahead and gave the class when nobody was there for the people to benefit. All right, I know I said a lot today, but just open it up for any comments and questions. We'll try and answer it. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk today. And so Ravindra came for one program in Tochi and he got sick for 1 week. He said he had the food wasn't nice. But I was just making the point. Prabhupada, no matter how sick he was, he continued with his service. And he made that a priority. I'm only using your name, Ravindra. Ravindra for 1 week was indisposed. And then, he's calling me, Vidyapati, do this midday class. I can't make it, I'm so sick. But the point that I wanted to make was, Prabhupada was sometimes so ill. And, I don't know why they do it, but I take offense to it because you see it now. I even saw it on TikTok the other day where they show the last moments of Prabhupada's life. And I think for me, that's very personal. I think it should be confined strictly to devotees and not to people on the outside. Even in the last few seconds of his life, Prabhupada was still chanting, talking, giving direction of how the movement must go. And never at once was he sidetracked. It was really, really, So this book, the Lilamrta, when I first came in contact with the book about 30 years ago, it took me 2 years to read it. Because I'm not a fast reader, I'm a very slow reader. But I started to savor the book. And it took me 2 years to read it. And then in school, one ma'am, she was very keen because in my break time I used to be reading. She said, Pregi, what is it that you're reading? I said, no, this is a book about the founder, Acharya of our movement. She said, lend it to me. And she read it in 2 months. God, I said, you're showing me up very badly. But I can tell you, she's now read the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. She just started the Chaitanya Charitamrita series. She's now going to the New Jagannath temple in Phoenix. And she says, thank you for introducing me to Srila Prabhupada. I feel my life is more fulfilling, more rewarding. In a day, she reads at least 100 pages of Srila Prabhupada's books, And I think she's gone. I take my inspiration from her when it comes to reading because I only can read maybe up to 20 pages a day. But phew, she's just an avid reader. But it just shows how we can come in contact with Srila Prabhupada through so many different ways. I told you the example of how I came in contact with the movement. I met Madri in the street in Johannesburg. And if anybody knows Madri, she's a very pushy somebody, boy oh boy. If she can help it, she'll push that book down your throat because that's how she is. So she came at me, hey Prabhu. I said, what? That's not my name. I said, my name is Pregi. She said, oh, okay, Pregi. So we call everybody Prabhu because that's a very, very, respectful name. I'm selling some books and I'd like you to take a book. That time I was waiting for my wife to come from Randburg into Joburg. So she gave me the Science of Self-Realization. And I took the book, I started reading it as I was talking to her. And as I'm going back to the flat, I continue reading. I didn't put the book down. I finished it at about 8 o'clock the next day. I'm a slow reader. So when I finished the book, at the back of the book, there was an invite. Please meet at exclusive books on Sunday a tav will come and pick you up and take you to Mulder's Drift. I didn't understand too much I didn't know what was a tav. I didn't know what was Mulder's Drift. But when I got there at 2 o'clock at Exclusive Books in Hillbrow on that Sunday, there was like about 50 Indians from Durban all standing there and waiting for the tav. And that's how we got to go to Mulder's Drift. And I was saying the last time when I spoke, if you had ever been to Mulder's Drift, it was like what Prabhupada wanted in our movement. Self-sufficient, cows, growing their own produce. They had a gurukul there. Everything was beautiful. Everything was from the land to the plate. That's basically how it was. All right. No questions? Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yeah. 289.